Hi, welcome to another episode of Startup Strides. Today, my guest is Andrea. He's the co-founder and CEO of Thrad. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here.
I'm very excited to interview you, and I don't want to waste any time, so I'm going to jump right into my questions. I guess my first one would be very naturally, what inspired you to build Thrad, and actually, what are you building with Thrad?
Yeah. I started Thrad because I'm obsessed with advertising. I love ads. We actually own the domain iloveads.ai, which redirects to
No way.
Thrad. And so when I was at university, I just started to do marketing and it was super fun to me. I was just freelancing for different companies, usually small startups, and it was super fun. Right? Marketing is very creative, it's very artistic, but at the same time, marketing is very technical, very kind of science driven, very rigorous. And so just spending more time into the space, the harmony of the two worlds was super appealing to me, where I just spend more time doing marketing, going to events, meeting people in the industry, and just doing lots of crazy marketing. Um, and so ultimately, I did advertising at Perplexity. They were doing their own advertising initiatives, putting ads inside of Perplexity itself. And I had met my current co-founder Marco, who's also Italian. He was doing his PhD in machine learning. And so we just started building and hacking different products together, all in advertising, but actually not starting to work on Thrad. And ultimately, we decided to build Thrad to put ads in LLMs. And so that's what we do at Thrad, where we do paid ads inside of LLMs, paid media in AI. So not organic GEO, um, but actual advertising infrastructure with real time bidding systems, doing that in milliseconds every single day. So where we help AI companies to monetize with ads and advertisers to buy those ads.
Wow, that's really cool. And I have a question about the distinction between those two things. But before that, when you started Stride, what was the initial reaction from people around you?
Yeah, I think I had quite a bit of support. Being kind of a young entrepreneur, I think it's easy to just have people support you. And yeah, like some people um, believe in you and are trying to be helpful. Some people less, but I think that's just a natural function of entrepreneurship. Where if it's so obvious to everyone, then everyone would do it themselves and they would do it better. And so you have to be by design contrarian, at least if you're early enough, right? Because that's, you want to be able to get early in the cycle and kind of arbitrage on that asymmetry and being contrarian, right? So yeah, if everyone is supporting you, that's probably an anti-signal.
When I was browsing your LinkedIn, one thing, and you already touched upon it, one thing I noticed was the phrase, not GEO, not AI SEO, but paid media for AI. Now, I'm not very knowledgeable. I'm ignorant. So explain to me, please. Unpack what that means and also unpack the distinction between those two things.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm sure a lot of people this year, last year, heard about AEO, GEO, right? Generative Engine Optimization. And so what that is essentially writing a lot of blogs on your website and hoping that those LLMs would pick up those blogs and rank you better in the LLM, right? And so that's organic ranking, right? So just like in Google, you have organic results, and then you have paid results. And so the business, the technology, everything is different between organic results and paid results, right? So in organic results, that's geo, AEO, ranking organically inside of those LLMs. Again, write some text on the internet and hope that, those LLMs would catch you. Paid advertising is actually infrastructure, real-time bidding systems, right? So there's an ad opportunity, and then you have advertisers that bid. You know how in advertising there's real-time bidding systems, right? So I'm going to bid on an ad opportunity, and so you have a lot of signals, you have a lot of data, and so there's this ad real estate people chat. Once in a while, we inject a sponsored result, right? So think about it similar to Google. In Google, you have organic results, and then you have the sponsored section, right? And so the sponsored is totally different, right? You're going to bid on a keyword. You can actually buy for an ad. And so in the organic results, you can't actually buy that, right? You just need to write a lot of content and pray that you're going to be ranked first or at the top. When you actually do paid ads, well, you can, most definitely be in front of the audience that you want exactly. You can decide which geography you want to target, what audience you want to target, when and how much you want to target them. And so that's kind of the key distinction, right? Similar to historically in Google, you have organic results, you have paid. Same thing today in LLMs. You have organic results, and now paid advertising instead of LLMs is emerging. And that's where we help companies actually buy ads inside of those conversational environments.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, it's those companies will essentially open up those bids to potential customers, and you would have a chance to buy those bids. And you are the infrastructure layers that makes that allows
Yes,
that to happen.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've seen or read about a couple of startups trying to optimize this GEO thing, how to get your, you know, name out there much more easily. And why did you not pursue that path and decide to focus more on paid
Um,
source, paid media?
because those are just two different kind of categories, totally different businesses. That is more marketing technology, whereas my business and what I was mostly interested is advertising technology. And so what's the
Mm,
difference? Um, Advertising is paid advertising, whereas marketing is just promotion of any business. And so um, there's legacy advertising technology companies that are indeed in this programmatic advertising ecosystem, right? That are doing this bidding, buying and selling of ads, just like in the stock market, you have buying and selling stocks, right? You have the stock exchange. Other businesses in advertising operate its ad exchanges, right? And so instead of buying and selling stocks, you buy and sell ads. And so that was kind of the category that was I was interested in. Um, at the time, there weren't ads in LLMs, and now there are. And so, yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. Like advertising technology is very unique to itself, very different from marketing technology. And so, a lot of times people confuse marketing and advertising as the same thing. And they are used interchangeably, but technically, marketing is just a practice of promoting oneself across any form factor, and advertising is actually buying some ad real estate, right? And so, yeah.
mm. You learn something new every day. Just found out the difference. Um, so the internet has gone through several major shifts, right? From websites to social feeds, from feeds to now we have short form video, right? Um, and you're betting that AI conversation is going to become the next attention layer. How does advertising, and you kind of touched upon it, but I want you to elaborate a bit more. How do you think advertising fundamentally change when interface is a conversation rather than a feed?
Yeah. Our approach here is that conversational advertising really unlocks a new experience for brands to connect with their customers. And kind of my framework here is that this is the first time ever that brands can talk to their customers at scale one-on-one. Right? Advertising actually comes from the Latin advertire, which means redirect the attention. And so that's what advertising is, right? You redirect the attention of the user from a publisher who owns the attention of the user and sells it to the advertiser in exchange of a financial transaction. And so this is what happens in advertising. And so until now, advertising was very much broadcasting, was one-sided, right? Where I, the brand, I have a message and I'm going to spam as many people with this single idea, right? And you had no feedback loop, right? If I see a billboard in the street, right, and I see a JC Deco billboard for Adidas shoes, I can literally talk to the billboard
Hmm.
about shoes, and say, "Oh, I really like those shoes. Do you have the same shoes in red? Are the shoes waterproof?" Any ad on Instagram, or any video ad, any display ad, any image ad, I can literally talk to the image and say, where is the closest store next to me right now? And so what conversation advertising allows is that I can talk to the ad. I have the
Hmm.
ad in the chat and I can say, "Oh, those shoes are really nice. Like, do you have this size? Where is the closest store next to me right now?" And it's going to give me a suggestion. "Hey, this is where you are. This is where the next store is. You should go there right now." How much sugar is there in this? How many proteins? You can literally talk to the ad. And I think that's fascinating, not only from a consumer perspective, right? Like you can get to learn more about the brands. You can get to connect with them, but that's obviously also incredible from an advertiser perspective when now they can just better understand their customers, better serve them. And so that's what's really unique here is that you can literally talk to an ad.
Hmm. No, that's a fascinating perspective. And yeah, you're right. It's been historically about the redirection, right, of the tension and the interruption in a way too, right? Like it's banners, pop-ups, like sponsored posts. And so in your experience in the AI age, right? Or like from your kind of perspective in the AI age, what's the best AI ads should feel like?
Yeah, we think that a lot of people, you know, um, don't feel the best about ads, right? We saw the Anthropic Super Bowl ad against ads, paradoxically. I did personally feel that that's super funny. Um, it's true that a lot of people are ad phobic. A lot of people reject ads and don't like ads. There's even this phenomenon of ad fatigue where people are overwhelmed with ads. If you count the amount of ads that you're exposed in a day, sometimes that goes from multiple hundreds of ads per day, and we don't really think about it. But from ads, on socials to billboards, you have so many ads that you're exposed to, and so it does make sense that in a lot of ways advertising um, has shortcomings in terms of the experience, in terms of disrupting users' digital consumption, and being very intrusive, not being very privacy friendly, and so it makes sense that people hate ads. Right? But I don't think that that has to be the case. I don't think that advertising is intrinsically bad and evil. Actually, advertising can be great, and people love great ads. Right? People love helpful ads. People love inspiring ads, and so that's the same thing that we aspire to with building Thread. Is we try to make ads helpful. We try to make ads that people love. We try to make ads that show people the brands that they love. And so, yeah, essentially that's kind of how we think about it.
Mm, fair enough. And we're talking about, I guess, the consumer's exposure to that ads and how they would react. I guess from a creator of ads, you are kind of sitting in the between, seeing both sides of the table. What's your what's your take? I guess what's your opinion, or perhaps what's your even advice to the creators of those ads, like how they should approach? Because you're right, like we are being bombarded by so many ads, and there's a bit of a ad fatigue in everything, and it's like, how do you stand out?
Yeah. Um, I think it's a lot about connection and brands actually being helpful and delivering value to their customers. Bad advertising tries to extract value from users and doesn't deliver any value. And so it's about rebalancing this trade of from value extraction to delivering value to the end users, where the ads shouldn't only be about the consumption of the ad itself, but they should also be educational, or they should be helpful or entertaining somehow. And so that's the best kind of advertising, are those ads that people love, the ads that are inspiring to people. And so when marketers should think about advertising themselves, that's what they should think about, right? Whether it be an AI generated ad that can be hyper personalized, or non AI generated ads, that's, I think, the most important thing is like, how can I be most helpful to my customers, right? How can I give to them as much value? And so there can be different vehicles for that, different ad formats, different ways to communicate with your audiences. But that's essentially the most important thing, right? What are the ads that people love? Is just the ads that are helpful, right? And in the context of advertising instead of LLMs, and this is what we see firsthand every single day, is that most people chatting to AI, they essentially have problems, right? They're trying to find a solution where people say, hey, help me with my homework, help me with my fitness journey, help me travel to this destination. And so in that sense, we're not trying to just spam people with ads that they don't want, but just show them brands that can be helpful, right? People have problems, companies solve people's problems. And so we can get to show them brands that can actually be helpful. So when, somebody is trying to work out, then maybe they care about like vitamins and proteins to actually help them achieve their endeavors and, their journeys and so on. And so same, if I want to travel, well, the LLM can give me a list of locations, but you actually need the company to execute the travel. An airline is actually going to bring you there. And so it makes sense to actually promote an airline because you have a problem, you want to travel, where like an airline actually can get you to that destination.
My ADHD is kicking in, so I'm going to digress a bit. Uh, is there a company you think is doing this advertising game really, really well?
In ad tech, or just like any marketing,
I mean,
any,
since you're very entrenched in the space and you love that, so I'm curious,
yeah.
from experts' perspective, is there any company you really like? You feel like they're kind of figured it out?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot. So that's going to be a tough one. I think a timely one is the World Cup has just started. And so a lot of companies are kind of fighting for people's attention. I think this is the
Mm.
biggest event in the world, or at least biggest sports events in the world. Like, more than 1 billion people are going to tune in for this World Cup. And a lot of brands or people are fighting for people's attention. And so one ad that I saw recently was a Kalshi ad. I think Kalshi has been killing it from a marketing perspective. They're very creative, um, very timely, and very intertwined with culture. And so generally, what I think is very underappreciated in marketing is time, right? And speed.
Mm.
So just like in startups, right? Um, where everything is about speed, marketing and the best marketing is also all about speed, where the best marketing teams are able to advertise at the speed of thought. They advertise at the speed of news. They advertise at the speed of culture. And so translating that into actually executing marketing, that's where the best companies actually win in marketing, right? When you're as close as possible to culture, what's happening in the news, as close to your customers as possible. These are the teams that are succeeding. And Kalshi, I think, is a testament to that, where the Knicks, were just selected
It's
to
all
go
over my Instagram. It's all over my Instagram. Yeah.
is to go in the finals. And so, all the New Yorkers went in the streets. Kalshi
Yeah.
had, I think, the Unitree Go One. It's called. They had the humanoid, right? And they sent a humanoid in the street with a Kalshi Knicks jersey, and that is like super cool, right? And that brings a lot of value to their users and audiences in general, because it's very entertaining, right? You see like a lot of crazy people in the street. This robot like wearing the jersey of the Knicks and with Kalshi, super cool intrinsically, but it's also very powerful from them because they're close to culture. They're close to people. They drive culture forward. They dictate the conversations. And so that is truly a great example of like great marketing that is timely, that is just great value to consumers in general. Another ones that they did for the World Cup is they hired, I think, Timothy Chalamet, and they had him a dentist on a chair, and the dentist is like opening his mouth and putting, the dentist equipment in his mouth, and he's saying Kalshi, but as if he has something in his mouth, and so he's like
Mm.
mumbling Kalshi, and that's kind of just funny and play on words, and so it is a bit unconventional in the sense
Yeah.
that everybody is like just recording a celebrity play football, and for their World Cup campaign, they have a celebrity doing something totally random but a bit funny. And so, yeah, again, this is like a great example of delivering value to the audiences in the form of entertainment, and also being at the center of culture. Where Timothy Chalamet is at the center of culture, right? He's like, um,
Mm.
he's dating like the Kylie
Kylie
Jenner,
Jenner, yeah.
and there's like a lot of memes around him, and so he is a bit of the embodiment of their audience. I think so. So yeah, that's like basically quick one is like Kalshi is great. They're at the center of culture. They're executing really
No,
well.
you actually very valid answer. All over my Instagram, I see the street interviews and the microphone has Kalshi on it. And I'm like, it looks random. It looks like organic, but it's like Kalshi sponsored, but you don't really think about it actively too. It's very perfect, very smart. And you're right. Timing and culture, I feel like they are the most important factors right now. No.
And I like the when you said organic, because actually those are the best kind of ads. The best
Yeah.
ads don't feel like ads, right? They're woven into the experience. They're not supposed to disrupt your consumption, but they're supposed to be complementary. They're supposed to be additive. And so that's the best kind of advertising. One that I really like, I think, is more a new phenomenon of TBPN, right? Where they're very famous for. Do you know the podcast as well? They're
Yeah,
like
yeah, the startup tech.
the that got acquired by OpenAI,
Yep. Yep.
right? And so technology business programming network, and they're incredibly good at weaving in their sponsors into the conversation. And so when I was telling that the best marketing is marketing at the speed of news, they're able to weave their brands into the news. And so if something happens about the stock market, the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange is one of the sponsors. And so every time something is happens in the stock market, they mention them. Or if something is happening about e-commerce, they may seamlessly weave Shopify, who is also their sponsor. Or if I think they were sponsored by CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity company. And so every time there's some news about cybersecurity, they're going to bring that. And so again, I think why is that so powerful? For two main reasons. The first one is that they're at the center of news, right? Marketing at the speed of news. The other one is that you want to convey to people this concept of problem solution, right? Just like I was telling you earlier in LLMs, but in general, people and companies have problems and they need brands to help them solve those problems. And so this is probably one of the most powerful realizations of those problems, right? Like when I see the problem in probably one of its most powerful embodiments, like a problem that's in the news that other people share, that's a problem that's the center stage of conversations. And then I'm exposed to a brand that can solve that problem for me or for others. That's very powerful, right? And so that's why marketing at the speed of news, and then having your brand at the center of the news and having the brand the solution to the problem that the news is, that's super powerful. And so that's why I think, they've done extremely well, obviously for them as the media assets that they are and the products that they deliver. But I think a lot of people can resonate to how seamlessly they weave the ads
Mm,
conversation. And generally, people hate ads, but the TBPN ads, people seem to love them. And so I think
mm.
those are some of the reasons why people love TBPN ads.
No, oh my God, yeah, such a valid point. Like it boils down to a few things, as you said, timing. It's just this seamless experience of ads, feeling organic, and it doesn't feel forced. But you are being exposed to ads. It is genius. I mean, if anybody's watching, I'm open to sponsors. Feel free to reach out. And another channel I think that I really like, Friday Beers, I think it's called. Very funny reels, very funny YouTube videos. But then you see how organically they seamlessly integrate, ads into their videos too, and like you don't mind it. And I think, I guess, a bit of a tangent, but Gen Z marketing was, in a way, what kind of made ads fun and interesting. I mean, Ryanair was doing a lot of that.
Yeah,
Duolingo was doing
of
a lot
course.
of that. And right now it's kind of mainstream. Everybody's trying to be this Gen Z marketer. And it
Yeah.
started kind of
Indeed.
organically initially. And then it just obviously it was working. So everybody started copying it. Um, but Gen Z, I mean, they are the main consumers and the driving force behind the consumption. Yeah, and that's why they are the main targets for ads too. Do you think, how do you see that kind of marketing evolve? Do you see Gen Z marketing is still going to be around, or do you think that's changing to something else too?
Yeah, I'm obviously a Gen Z myself, and so understand Gen Z marketing. I'm a fan of Gen Z marketing. At the same time, when I speak to senior marketers, big brands that spend millions on ads every single month, they seem a bit enslaved by the concept of Gen Z marketing. And I think over index on Gen Z. I think if you think of advertising more broadly, marketing as a lubricant of GDP, as a demand generation and desire creation instrument, and think about like what's the proportion of GDP created by Gen Z, it's still not the majority, right? And so, as a rational business, an allocator of media budget and allocator of resources, I need to have a diversified marketing portfolio that speaks to all my audiences relatively, in proportions to how much money that's going to make me. And so, I think marketers that over index on any audience, any channel, um, in over
Yeah.
index on anything, that's going to be suboptimal. And so I think that's less of a trend right now, but there was a period where all the CMOs, all the leading marketers would kind of think that Gen Z marketing is gonna help them crack, the future. I don't know what they were thinking, but they were thinking that
Yeah.
like, oh, if they crack Gen Z marketing, then they're done. They're gonna be hyper successful. And so in some sense, it does make sense because you need to prepare the guards for the next round, um, and kind of the next generation and so on. And so as a brand with longevity, I want to be able to serve different generations, and so Gen Z are going to grow into more senior um, sort of audiences that are going to have higher purchasing powers. And so that's why it's very important to activate those audiences. But it's also important to not over index. It's also
Mm,
or to prematurely do that and still to be rational, right? I think generally the best marketers and advertising in general is one of the most capitalist industry in the world where media buyers deploy budgets to whatever can yield the best outcomes for them. And so marketers should be rational and they should be very transactional. And so if something performs and if something makes sense, but it's obviously all about the ROI that I can get on the ads. It's all about the return on ad spend that I can get. And so, yeah, Gen Z marketing is super cool. It's super fun, but it's also not all of marketing.
fair enough. Very fair enough. Another thing, actually, I'm all over the place. Sorry, but you mentioned something which I want to ask a question about the timing thing, right? Sometimes you see these brands tailor these ads for certain social movements or the causes of the time, right? And similar ad can be pursued completely differently based on the brand. Some brands are loved when they end up making those kind of more socially conscious ads, while others are like, oh, they're just trying to hop on the bandwagon, right? Like they're trying to capitalize on the social movement, social cause. How do you think brands should think of, timing, not just only trying to force it because the timing is right, but also, I guess having the awareness that, maybe it's not all about timing.
Yeah. The non-pleasant answer, it depends.
Mm,
Because it depends on the brands, it depends on their audiences, depends on lots of things. But I think a few points here. The first one is a brand is not the things that a company says, it's the things, a brand is the things that a company does,
mm,
which much more power reflection of who they are than just like a logo or like some text on their website, right? And so this is what people actually remember. This is the things that people actually care about is what companies. And so jumping on trends, great. Um, what's very important is also showcasing who you are as a company, who you are as a brand by actually doing things and and speak much louder than words in that sense. Timing is very important again here because you want to be very close to culture. And
mm,
so it's important to be authentic in the sense that you want to stay on brand, right? If you off brand all the time, then you deprecate a lot of that fabric that is very fragmented and people don't understand who you are, right? You do one thing one day and then you do another thing the other.
mm,
And so you're going to lose a lot of that brand equity. And so generally you want to stay on brand. You should know who you are as a person. You should know who you are as a company. And so that people know who you are and when to come to you, right? And so
mm.
your brand should also be a reflection of the business that you're in and make sure that people can rely on you. And so, yeah, that's essentially what's interesting, right? In terms of how to jump on trends, these kind of things, it's like, are you the brand to do that? Is this right for you or not? Timing in that sense is important because you want to stay close to culture. And so cultural trends are always evolving. If you lost that cultural cycle, and you're not advertising at the speed of culture, then you're either, not a strong, not a strong brand or, people are going to see that.
If Google search kind of created this economy around keywords and, Meta created one around the audience targeting, what becomes kind of the core assets in the age of conversational AI?
Yeah. I think what we're going to enter into is the move from behavioral targeting to contextual targeting. And so the future of, um, probably the most valuable assets in marketing is going to be the context, right? And we're able to have a lot more context because people chat for a long time, right? People have very long messages over deep conversations. And so gathering that context, I think is kind of the space that we're getting into where people were just typing keywords, right? That's why you would have keyword based targeting. Now people are prompting, right? Full queries. And so that's the transition that we're living in is this move from keywords to queries.
So the context is going to be the kind of the one of the major. One thing though, and I guess might be a bit of a point of tension, or maybe I'm just getting it wrong. So I'll give you kind of a chance to clarify it for us. people do treat AI less as assistants and more so like advisors. They talk about everything from personal issues to what they want to do for their honeymoon to AI, with ads as our tool to get somebody's attention and to get something done, right? At, at what point, I feel like there's a bit of a blurry line between our recommendation or is this kind of manipulation, how do you think about that line, and designing and building around that?
Well, that line is visible. It's a legal boundary where paid advertising needs to be labeled, it needs to be disclosed, to be
Yeah.
IAB compliant, which is the ad tech regulator, the Interactive Advertising Bureau. And so you have a bunch of um, kind of categories that you need to check to ensure that advertising is separate from the organic responses. It's always independent. And so in that sense, advertising is labeled, it's not trying to be deceptive and to hide that, it's woven into their response. And that's why you have organic advertising,
Mhm.
paid advertising. Um, some people can make the case that oh, advertising is biased, but you can make the case that everything is biased, right? Just like in organic advertising, people think that organic results are supposed to be more premium and more authentic and more truthful than paid results. You can make it an economically rational case where organic advertising is probably just as biased, or maybe more than paid advertising. And here's why. Um, the organic results that you see are a function of blogs that are written by AI and blogs. And so everyone is also competing against each other to try to promote their own agenda, even in organic results. The organic results that you see are exactly that. They're just a function of like people trying to spam the internet with logs to pray that they're going to be ranked by LLMs. So that's the first thing. Obviously, those AI providers and LLMs have barriers into place to, fight spam and all these kind of things. But still, right, they're obviously biased by the internet, which the internet itself is biased because people obviously try to, speak highly of themselves and try to rank, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is you can make the argument that paid advertising is probably more truthful and more valuable to the consumer than the organic replies. And here's why. Because if you're having a kind of an economically rational approach, somebody that is willing to show you an ad and therefore paid for that attention and pay for that ad real estate in a bidding mechanism, the one that's paying the most is the one that's most willing to show you an ad and therefore has financial incentives to show that ad because they're going to have the highest return from that ad, right? And so why would they be willing to show you an ad? Because it's going to be very valuable for them to show you an ad because probably it's very helpful what they're trying to show you. And so in that sense, paid advertising filters out the noise and it's only going to show what is most relevant and most valuable to the end user because they're willing to pay the most. And why are they willing to pay the most? Because it's probably the highest value to them and the highest value to you. And
Mm,
so
that's such a very
there can be flaws in that mechanism, right? Both on the organic side, on the paid side, you can have somebody that kind of tries to betray the system by like being irrational and therefore paying so much more, right? You can imagine like scams, right? But overall, over a long time horizon enough, it plays out quite positively. And so that's why, I love advertising so much.
No, that's a fair point. And you know what? Anything that can be optimized will have bias. And organic search can be optimized too, which means that you can introduce bias there too. There's a bit of a old joke. Every energy technology um, ends up, making energy by boiling water, and every tech company somehow ends up making money through ads. So that kind of boil down to those things. How do you feel like AI founders, AI special application layer founders, are thinking of monetization, sustainable monetization? I think there's been a huge focus, even in ChatGPT, it was very much subscription based, but they are switching to ads within their interface too. So, what do you think from your kind of exposure to AI founders? Is there like an open appetite, or do you think they're still underestimating monetization?
I think until now, most AI founders and tech people in general were reluctant to advertising. Just developers in general are more ad phobic audiences that don't really like ads. But I think this is shifting where now that the market leader is giving authority to everyone else to monetize with ads, it grants the freedom to everyone else and gives them the green light that like, oh, if ChatGPT is doing it, then everyone else is doing it. And so now we're truly seeing an explosion of ad monetization where now the leader grants them authority to do it. Everyone else is doing it. Another one is that um, you have a bit of a market maturity that allows for that monetization. Until now, most company wanted to grow. They wanted to aggregate users. But now that I have all my users, I'm kind of reaching some sort of plateau. Now I need to turn on monetization, right? Whereas before I would have usually optimized for growth. And so those are some of the phenomena that we're seeing.
Mm,
Another one
very
that, like,
interesting.
just that's the fate of the internet, right? In the same way that ads were the business model of the internet, it's becoming the business model of AI. And so with ads, we actually get to subsidize the tokens, right? AI is very expensive, and so you wanna subsidize tokens, and we wanna deliver this form of sponsored intelligence.
Mm. Sometimes I wonder, once AI replaces all the jobs, who's going to buy the stuff? Who's going to pay for you know? Um, some of the biggest opportunities still lies in the when it comes to technology, still like within the infrastructure layer, right? Which users don't often really see. I mean, you look at NVIDIA is obviously providing the GPUs. Cerebras recently IPO'd, which was also, I believe, an infrastructure company, and you are building an infrastructure layer for advertising, essentially the new age of advertising, which might sound less sexy than, let's say, AI assistant or whatever, but it is still a very important, probably one of the most important, if not the most important layer. What have you learned about company building from choosing the picks and shovels layer as than the consumer facing one?
To me personally, that's more sexy than not sexy. I love what I'm doing, and I think that advertising is incredible. I think that to some extent, advertising is saving the world. It's making AI cheaper. It's making AI free, and so we're subsidizing AI. We're delivering sponsored intelligence, democratizing AI, giving it access to everyone, and so again, also showing people brands that they love, showing people brands that can solve their problems. So I think it is actually very sexy. It is also a very challenging engineering problem, right? We have millions of conversations every single day, and matching them to thousands of brands every single day. It is kind of a very challenging engineering problem. And so in that sense, it's super sexy to me.
That's very cool. I don't know what future. I feel like in this day and age, things are changing not by years, but by days, by weeks. So I don't know what kind of timeline to provide. But let's say looking ahead 5 years, right? How do you think this AI and also what you're doing and what this just development in this advertising space do? How do you think AI will reshape commerce and customer acquisition?
Yeah. The internet is becoming more conversational, right? People are chatting to AI, people are chatting more, they're clicking less. And so that's the trend that we're seeing where commerce is becoming more conversational. It allows to have consumers share much more context and therefore just have much more helpful results for them. And so that's how the internet is evolving. I think there is definitely a time compression where the technology is there and the adoption is more a function of time.
Mm, mm. And like when it comes to distribution, right? Or I guess the brand building in this in a world where AI becomes this intermediary kind of discovery. What do you think? Like, how do you think they should think about distribution too? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, in terms of distribution, I think that is going to become a gradually more important function within an organization where intelligence and tokens becomes commoditized. Anyone can build anything, right? I can just like vibe code an app. But now that I have an app, well, how can I get in front of people, right? And so marketing is going to become more of a mode where now that I have something, right? It's easier for anyone to build anything. I can vibe code any company any day, very rapidly, but you cannot buy that attention as easily. right? And so marketing and distribution is becoming more important.
I genuinely very enjoyed this episode. I learned, I had fun, and honestly, it's always nice to talk to people who are genuinely passionate about what they're doing. As I think that passion becomes infectious. So I'm going to ask my final question to you, which is really interesting, and it's open to you how you interpret it, how you want to answer it. But I want to ask what kind of contrarian, unconventional, or even controversial belief you hold about the space you're building in or the broader AI ecosystem.
That's an easy one for me. Loving ads. I love ads. Most people don't love ads. And I think it is controversial today to love advertising. And to me, that's not in a light way saying I love advertising. Um, my purpose in life is literally marketing. And my definition of marketing, which I borrowed from Seth Godin, is that marketing is about spreading ideas that matter to people who care, right? Marketing is about spreading ideas that matter to people who care. There's incredible ideas in the world, incredible companies, incredible startups, and people should know about them. And so for me, starting Thrad was actually the most powerful vehicle and the most scalable way to exercise this purpose. Where today with Rad, we're literally connecting every single day, millions of people chatting through AI with thousands of brands that they love and they should know about. And so, yeah, that's like my controversial take is loving ads. And most people don't feel that way, but that's how I feel.
Andrea, lovely episode. Was genuinely enjoyed talking to you, and I hope we can remain in touch so I can hear more about ads and Thread.
For sure. Thanks so much for having me.